Want to get better at transitioning between chords?
Oh yeah, I sure do.
I think you're going to find some real value here with these 5 essential tips. I'm David Harsh with Guitar Success for You. We've had several requests from our subscribers on YouTube to teach on the topic of smooth chord transitions, and that's why we've created this video.
I have been waiting for this topic.
We all want clean chord transitions, but sometimes we struggle to make them sound good. If we don't have solid chord transitions locked in, one of 2 things will happen. First, we'll have to abandon rhythm entirely as our strumming hand waits for our fretting hand. Second, we'll stay in rhythm, but our chords will sound muddy and sloppy.
Oh man, that's what I sound like sometimes.
I'm going to ask you 2 questions as we continue. Feel free to say your answers out loud. First question, is it possible for me to teach you every possible chord transition between all known guitar chords during this short lesson today?
Probably not.
Second question, do you think it's possible for me to teach you some overarching strategies that will help make any chord transition smoother?
Yes.
Yeah, buddy. I have 5 tips, and even if only one works well for you right now, this lesson will be worth your time. But I suspect that all of them will help you at some point. Here's strategy number 1. Know your chords well. Go here with me. If I don't know how to play 2 chords really well on their own, is my transition between those 2 chords going to be smooth?
Nope.
So really work individual chords. Get comfortable with voicing them from low to high and from high to low.
What do you mean?
What do I mean? Well, let's just say we have a C major chord. This was one of the trickiest chords for me to figure out early on because although I could fret the notes, my fingers actually muted out other strings by accident, like this. So I started with my first finger all by itself. Then I added my second finger, and I worked on it until the notes were clean. Finally, I added my third finger. Eventually, I could play all the notes cleanly. But the journey doesn't stop there. I would say it's good to build it both ways. What if I started by dropping in my third finger, then my second, then my first finger? So going both ways really allows for thorough fretting. Then my fingers know what to do. Strategy number 2, pronounce your chords like words.
What do you mean?
What do I mean? Well, chords exist in context, right? How many songs are there out there that only have one chord?
I can't think of any.
I have one, just one, and it was written by my roommate Dan when I lived in a house with 3 other guys after college. Dan had just started playing the guitar, and within hours he told me he had written a song. I had to hear this. It goes like this.
D is for Dan, Dan is the man, Dan, Dan, Dan. That's me.
Yeah, well, that's literally the only song I can think of that only has one chord in it. And really, with all due respect to Dan, it's not that interesting yet. It needs more chords. What if, after a few days, Dan had decided to play D, A, G5, D over F sharp, E minor 7, A, and D? Much more sonically interesting, right? I like that a lot more, don't you?
Yep.
Let's think of a chord progression in this way. Chords are like words, and a chord progression is like a sentence. Here's a simple sentence for you. When I play guitar, I have fun. Now, I'm able to pronounce all of those words just fine. But was there a time, perhaps when I was much younger, when I couldn't pronounce some of those words? Let's flash back to, I don't know, age 3. I might have said, when I play guitar, I have fun. Which word in that sentence needs the most work?
Guitar.
So I basically need to focus on the part that needs the most work. like many aspects of life, including music, right? We don't need to practice the stuff we've got dialed in as much as the stuff that needs to be improved on, right? So if I was speaking, I'd pronounce guitar, guitar, guitar multiple times until I could just summon the word without thinking about it. Ready for a mic drop? If you can pronounce words, you can pronounce chords.
He literally just dropped a mic.
I'm going to pronounce each of the 5 chords I just played a moment ago, but here's the strategy I want you to consider employing. Make a fist and then see how quickly you can articulate the chord. Now, if D happens like this, it's not ready to pronounce at full speed, right? We want something more like this. Now, this may seem obvious, but I'm here to tell you I've met more guitarists who don't get this part down and their chords just don't end up sounding clean. In this progression of D, A, G5, D over F sharp, E minor 7, A, and D, let's say that D over F sharp was the chord I needed the most work on. Well, I'd pronounce each chord. I know D, A, and G5, but now I have D over F sharp. This one seems to take more work, so I'll give it more time and attention. Then I've got E minor 7, and then I already know A on my way back to D. Over time, I'll eventually have this. When I play guitar, I have fun. Are you picking up what I'm putting down?
I sure am.
Strategy number 3, anticipate the chord you're going to play. In his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, author Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. Rather than only thinking of the chord you're playing, think about what's coming up. That way, you'll be looking ahead and your mind will already be ready. If I'm reading a chart, any chart, whether it's got notation, tablature, or just chords, is it helpful for me to stare only at the chord I'm playing in the moment? Probably not, right? I mean, it would be a lot like riding a bike and staring down at the ground right where my front tire meets the road. Will that end well?
No, it will not.
I may run into something if I'm not on the lookout. I need to be aware of where I am, but also to look where I'm going. This is probably not rocket surgery for you, but it's worth saying. Sometimes we need to state the obvious. Strategy number 4, find common ground between chords. Believe it or not, some chords have hidden clues that actually facilitate cleaner transitions just by virtue of where you put your fingers. Let me give you an example. A moment ago, we played D to A. One chord that is very common in the key of D major is the chord A major. Now, depending on how you fret A, you could have as many as 2 fingers in common with the D chord. I like to play A like this. Open, 2, 1, 3, open. I unpack this at length in our YouTube video, Do Chord Fingerings Really Matter? If you want to check that out. But if you play A with these fingers, it can be much simpler to move from D to A and back with very little effort.
Why?
Why? Because the 3rd finger slides down 1 fret and the 1st finger stays in one place. Watch how smooth this is between D and my preferred fingering for A. So there's no need to lift all your fingers and rebuild the next chord from scratch. Chords like this have notes or strings in common, so rely on that common ground.
Common ground. I like it.
Now, what about 2 chords that aren't quite as connected, like C and D? Well, those are 2 important chords in the key of G, and last I checked, the key of G is a very useful key for guitar players, especially worship guitar players. Check out what C and D have in common. If I start with a C chord, I can actually think of my 1st finger having a diagonal movement from 2nd string C to 3rd string A and back. But what about the other 2 fingers? Well, they stay on the same fret with the same orientation of strings. Watch. 5th string C with 4th string E to second string D and first string F sharp. Look at these fingers. They're like a pair of synchronized swimmers, back and forth. Combine both elements, and we have this.
Synchronized swimmers. What a great comparison.
So, although the common ground between these two chords isn't as obvious, we still have a close connection with two strings and two sets of fingers on the same fret.
Much more effective.
Now, before we add the fifth and final strategy, I want to invite you to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. We've got more great content coming up, and we want you to know about it first. Thanks for considering.
I'm gonna do that right now.
Okay, strategy number 5. Bridge the gap with notes between the chords. Now, if you're a strumming guitar player like many out there are, you'll appreciate this. It actually involves a bit of sleight of hand. Your listeners' ears are not actually going to pick this up, but the notes between the chords will actually serve as a handoff point.
What do you mean?
What do I mean? Let the strings between the chords ring out only for a moment on your way to the next chord. Why? Because it's much more important to land the next chord on time than to focus on the transition as a musical element and miss the next chord. Let's try voicing a simple progression in E minor with the chords E minor 7, C2, G5, and D sus4, like this. Here's a tiny hint. What do all 4 of these chords have in common? The high D and the high G. Those create common ground, right?
Yeah, buddy, they do.
Okay, I'm gonna strum a simple pattern I affectionately call the camp strum. But you can call it whatever you want. Here's the finished product first with these 4 chords. 1 strumming cycle per chord. Now, did anything sound out of place?
Not really.
It's because I landed the chords on time. It's also because there's a bit of grace built into your listeners' ears as they hear the transition. Let me zoom in for a second and show you what happened. I actually did this. Did you notice that I strummed down and up on the transition point and made contact with a chord that didn't really sound all that great? It was this chord. It's sort of a chord, but not a great voicing. So why does this work? Again, I'm moving to the next chord with purpose, and these open notes serve as a sort of bridge. Here's the strumming pattern at speed one more time. It works.
It totally works.
Now, if you're thinking to try chord transitions with fingerstyle, which is a more in-depth discussion topic, just make sure the notes you play work for the transitions and don't sound out of place, even if you need to add them in as you play. Fingerstyle guitar is a vast field, but it's very rich. If you want a fingerstyle crash course, check out this video here on our channel. But as you can see, being more deliberate with this process will lead to much cleaner transitions, which is what we want, right?
It sure is.
We do have a really cool diagram inside our Guitar Success for You membership called the Chord Kite diagram that maps out all the pathways in a progression. And if you want that, well, you could join the membership and get access to that and a whole bunch more goodies. We link to Guitar Success for You in the description below this video.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I want that diagram and that method.
Okay, so I'll recap the 5 strategies for you one more time. Strategy number 1. know your chords well. Strategy number 2, pronounce your chords like words. Strategy number 3, anticipate the chord you're going to play. Strategy number 4, find common ground between chords. And strategy number 5, bridge the gap with notes between the chords. This process may have felt a little methodical, but really it's just about getting into the details.
Details are what make music sound so good.
You're right on about that.
Wait, you can hear me?
I sure can. I've heard you this whole time, and I appreciate you following along so well.
Well, you've got some good things to say. What do you recommend next?
Well, once you've got your chords dialed in, it might be time to expand your strumming artistry. And I've got a video that can help you with that. It's our 25-minute strumming workout that a lot of people have really gotten excited about. It's actually our most popular video right now. I'll see you there.
I can't wait.